Okay, picture this for a second. You're scrolling through some dark web job board, right? And you see a posting. The title is Foreign Agent. Huh.
Laughing slightly. Okay.
I'm with you.
The employer is, let's say, a major U.S. adversary. The perks are insane, jets, gold-plated, everything. But the interview process, it takes 40 years.
Yeah.
What does that resume even look like?
That is a deeply unsettling way to start a Monday morning. But I
Right.
see where you're going with it.
Well, it is Monday, January 26th, 2026. We are 1 year into Trump's second term, and I've been wading through this mountain of material you sent. The Russian Nexus, a strategic lexicon of influence. And this one called the Minimization Plan.
It's a lot, I know. But when you put them all together, the argument they're making is, well, it's pretty jarring.
It really is,
Okay.
because they're not looking for a smoking gun. There's no signed contract with the KGB.
No, nothing like that. They argue that if you look at the last 4 decades as a single body of work, Donald Trump has basically submitted the most flawless job application imaginable. And that's the key idea we need to unpack, right? This isn't about being James Bond. The sources are very clear on that. They use a different term, agent of influence.
Precisely, an agent of influence. The Minimization Plan dossier draws a really sharp line there. See, if you're a rival power, say the Sino-Russian axis, you're not going to invade the U.S. with tanks.
That's messy and expensive.
And it unites America against you. The real goal, the smarter goal, is what they call strategic exhaustion.
Strategic exhaustion. That sounds like how I feel after 5 minutes on social media.
It's not far off. But geopolitically, it's about pairing that exhaustion with something else the sources call epistemic nihilism.
Okay, epistemic nihilism. We have to break that down.
It sounds academic, but in this context, it's a weapon. It means destroying a population's ability to even know what's true anymore.
So the goal is minimization. You make the U.S. look so chaotic, so corrupt,
So unworkable.
that it just sort of folds in on itself. And these dossiers, they argue that Trump is the perfect vector for that. Not the guy who wrote the plan, but the delivery system.
Exactly. So let's grade this job application, because the Russian Nexus dossier takes us way back. Not to 2016.
No, it starts in the Cold War, 1987. This is the recruitment phase, I guess.
It's a pivotal moment. The Soviet Union is still there, but it's shaky. They're getting desperate. And Donald Trump, this flashy New York guy who loves the spotlight, flies to Moscow.
And the report stresses this wasn't just a tourist trip. It was managed by in-tourists.
Which sounds like a travel agency.
Right.
But in reality, the sources are clear. It was an arm of the KGB. It's how they managed and assessed foreigners. And they didn't just give him a regular room. They put him in the Lenin suite.
The full head of state treatment.
A massive ego stroke. They showed him building sites, told him he was a genius, the only one who could build a Trump Tower in Moscow.
Which he never did.
Never happened. But the report argues this was a classic cultivation operation. They were testing him. Can this man's ego be weaponized?
And they got their answer almost immediately. This is the part of the source material that just blew my mind. He gets back to New York and spends nearly $95,000 of his own money.
Which, adjusted for inflation, is a huge sum.
A huge amount. To buy full-page ads in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Boston Globe.
This is what the analysts call the immediate ROI, the return on investment. And you have to look at what the ad said. He's arguing that U.S. allies, like Japan and Saudi Arabia, are freeloaders.
That the U.S. should stop paying for their defense. It sounds just like the America First pitch we hear now.
It does now. But back in 1987, that was like a core pillar of Soviet foreign policy. Their whole goal was to fracture the Western alliance, to drive a wedge between the U.S. and NATO.
So prominent American capitalist comes back from a KGB-managed trip and immediately spends his own money to broadcast Moscow's exact talking points.
It's wild. It's the proof of concept. The dossier argues it showed two things. He could be influenced by flattery, and, more importantly, his worldview saw allies as economic rivals.
Which is a dream for a foreign adversary. You don't even have to tell him what to say.
You just wind him up and let him go.
Okay, let's move down the resume. The 90s and 2000s, the financial entanglement section. The genre kind of shifts here from spy thriller to like a financial crime story.
Well, the whole world shifted. The Soviet Union collapses. You get the Wild East era, and you have what they call capital flight. We're talking $15 to $20 billion a year flooding out of Russia.
Looking for a place to get clean.
Exactly. And at that exact moment, Donald Trump is a pariah. The sources say traditional banks had blacklisted him after the bankruptcies. He was desperate for cash.
Which leads to what the Russian Nexus dossier calls symbiosis.
That's the word they use. On one side, you have a developer with no credit. On the other, you have oligarchs with tons of illicit cash. He needed liquidity. They needed to launder their money through his real estate.
So at first it was just business, a marriage of convenience.
Probably. But the sources argue it quickly became a dependency. The dossier shows how that post-Soviet cash became the absolute lifeblood of his empire, all the way up to that 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow.
Ah, the Galerovs,
Yeah.
Putin's builders.
They're a key example. But the big takeaway from this era for the job application is that he went from being a useful voice to what the sources call a captured asset.
Captured, that's a heavy term.
It is. It means a sovereignty void was created. His own financial interest became so tangled up with foreign money that he could no longer act with, well, with true American sovereignty.
Your empire floats on Russian cash, you're not going to make policies that hurt Russia.
You become aligned by default.
Which brings us to the actual job description, the White House years. We mentioned the Minimization Plan earlier. Let's get deeper into that, because the sources frame it as this grand strategy from the Sino-Russian axis.
It really is the core of their argument. The plan assumes you can't beat the U.S. from the outside. It's too powerful. So the only way to win is to make America defeat itself.
Induce that strategic exhaustion we talked about.
Exactly. Make the American people so tired, so cynical, so confused that they just check out. And the sources are clear. They see Trump as the accelerator of this plan. There's a fascinating bit in there about the law of projection.
I saw that. He accuses his opponents of exactly what he himself is doing.
Always. Screaming about the deep state while, according to these analyses, hollowing out the actual state for his own benefit.
And the sources say that's not just a personality quirk, it's a tactic.
It's a core tactic. It creates chaos. It muddies the water so much that people just give up trying to figure out what's true. And that is the goal of minimization, to make democracy look just as dirty as autocracy.
Which is a perfect lead-in to the next skill on the resume, communication, or, as the dossier calls it, the strategic lexicon of influence, the list of quotes they compiled. The pattern is just impossible to miss.
It's incredibly consistent. They call it the inversion. A normal U.S. president praises Democratic allies and, criticizes dictators. Trump flips that script completely.
The examples are they're stark. He calls Justin Trudeau very dishonest and weak. NATO is obsolete. But then you look at his comments about adversaries.
Putin is highly respected. He praised the Chinese government's Tiananmen Square crackdown as a show of strength. He even called Kim Jong-un honorable.
Honorable. The man runs a nationwide prison camp. So why is this so important for the foreign agent role? What's the impact?
The analysis calls it the multipolar lure. By praising dictators for their strength and trashing allies as weak, he is validating authoritarianism. He's essentially marketing their system to Americans.
So he's making dictatorship seem strong and effective and democracy seem weak and foolish.
Correct. You couldn't pay a PR firm enough money to do that kind of brand damage to the West. He's acting as the chief marketing officer for the other side.
Okay, what about actual on-the-job performance? His first term and now, here in 26, the dossier calls this section policy as sabotage.
And it points to very specific actions, like pulling out of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, on day one of his first term. The sources call that a gift to Beijing.
Explain that one, because a trade deal sounds boring, but this seems like a huge deal.
It was. The TPP was basically a huge economic alliance designed to counter China's power in Asia. When Trump pulled the U.S. out, he created a massive vacuum.
And vacuums always get filled.
And China stepped right in.
Yeah.
It was a massive strategic retreat for the U.S. that cost us a generation of influence in Asia.
Then you have NATO constantly threatening to leave or saying Russia can do whatever the hell they want.
That's the strategic exhaustion part for our allies.
Yeah.
If you're Estonia, can you trust the U.S. anymore? No. So you start hedging your bets, it cracks the very foundation of the Western alliance.
But the dossier also brings up this idea from the first term called strategic incoherence.
Yes. That's from the Russian Nexus 2 report. It describes how you'd have the State Department trying to sanction Russia while the president was on Twitter praising Putin.
The head was fighting the body.
It paralyzed the government. But now, in 2026, the so-called adults in the room are gone. And the dossier points to what happened in 2025, the tariff pause, and this new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE.
Right, which sounds like a meme coin, but the analysis says it's basically a purge tool.
That's what they argue. It's the mechanism for Project 2025. You fire the nonpartisan experts, the intelligence officers, the civil servants. You basically remove the government's immune system.
So it can't fight off the virus of foreign influence or corruption.
And the executive can do whatever they want, with no guardrails left.
Which brings us to the darkest part of this whole application, the section they call the Epstein Files weaponization scenario. This is where it gets into twisting reality itself.
It is the final stage of the information war. The Minimization Plan source calls it the chaos protocol.
The Donnie don't strategy.
Right. The theory is, when you're implicated in a huge scandal, the normal move is to hide or deny. This protocol says, do the opposite.
Flood the zone.
Flood it with sewage. You imply everyone is guilty. You leak names, you spread rumors. If you can convince the public that the entire system is corrupt, that everyone is on that list, then your specific guilt becomes meaningless.
If the whole swamp is toxic, then my little bit of poison doesn't matter.
Precisely. But the collateral damage of that strategy is you achieve epistemic nihilism. The public just gives up. They stop believing in justice, in truth, in anything. They tune out.
And that's the ultimate victory for an adversary, isn't it? An American population that's so cynical, it just disengages.
Or worse, they cheer for the system to be burned down. They become willing accomplices in dismantling their own country. It's the inception move. You plant the idea that everything is broken until the people break it themselves.
So let's put it all together. The job application. You've got the 1987 propaganda ads. You have the 90s money laundering vehicle. You have the rhetoric that praises dictators. And you have the policy sabotage that isolates America.
It's a 4-decade portfolio. It's comprehensive.
It is. And when you lay it out like that, the metaphor stops being a clever hook and starts being, well, terrifying. He's ticked every single box.
And that's the final point the sources make. The perfect foreign agent in the 21st century doesn't need to be a spy handling dead drops in a park.
They just need to be a chaos agent.
A chaos agent who convinces the country to tear itself apart. The goal of the minimization plan is a U.S. that is isolated, internally divided, and completely untethered from reality.
And when you look around today, on January 26, 2026, it's hard to argue the mission hasn't been a stunning success.
Or that it isn't well underway. The trust is gone. And once that's gone, it is incredibly, incredibly difficult to get back.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with, straight from the source material. We started by asking, what would be on the resume for a foreign agent? But maybe the real question is this. If the goal was to get an American leader who would leave the country isolated, broken, and at war with itself, hasn't the employee of the month already been hired?
And if he has, the question we all have to face is there any way left to terminate the contract?
That is the question. Thanks for diving deep with us. Keep your eyes open out there. We'll see you next time.